This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Wednesday, May 13th. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. In a highly unique day of business on Capitol Hill, senators held a part virtual, part in-person hearing asking the nation's top health experts about the overall coronavirus response and the strategy for reopening the country. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson has more.
Dr. Anthony Fauci and other health experts testified in the Senate via video conference, warning of serious consequences if cities and states move into phase 1 of reopening before meeting the suggested guidelines.
My concern is that we will start to see little spikes that might turn into outbreaks.
Fauci warned without sufficient control, cities and states could be set back economically and socially.
There is no doubt, even under the best of circumstances, when you pull back on mitigation, you will see some cases appear. It's the ability and the capability of responding to those cases with good identification, isolation, and contact tracing will determine whether you can continue to go forward as you try to reopen America.
Top of mind for many senators, the reopening of the nation's schools.
Even at the top speed we're going, we don't see a vaccine playing in the ability of individuals to get back to school this term.
Republican Senator Rand Paul, who is also a doctor, believes it's a huge mistake if schools don't open this fall.
I think the one-size-fits-all that we're going to have a national strategy and nobody's going to go to school is kind of ridiculous.
He suggests the decision to reopen should lie with local school districts.
Much as I respect you, Dr. Fauci, I don't think you're the end all. I don't think you're the one person that gets to make a decision. We can listen to your advice, but there are people on the other side saying there's not going to be a surge and that we can safely open the economy, and the facts will bear this out. But if we keep kids out of school for another year, what's going to happen is the poor and underprivileged kids who don't have a parent that's able to teach them at home are not going to learn for a full year.
Fauci responded by saying his job is to advise according to scientific evidence, not economic or social impact. He also warned there's still a lot of unknown about the virus, particularly when it comes to its effects on children.
For example, right now, children presenting with COVID-19 who actually have a very strange inflammatory syndrome, very similar to Kawasaki's syndrome. I think we better be careful if we are not cavalier in thinking that children are completely immune to the deleterious effects.
Dr. Fauci testified that he does not think the U.S. has the virus under control yet, and that the death count is likely higher than what we've reported thus far. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
As the Senate grapples with how quickly the country can safely reopen, Democrats in the House are pushing for another massive economic relief package costing an estimated $3 trillion.
We must think big for the people now, because if we don't, it will cost more in lives and livelihood later. Not acting is the most expensive course. We are presenting a plan to do what is necessary to deal with the corona crisis and make sure we can get the country back to work and school safely.
This bill includes financial aid for state and local governments, assistance for mortgage and rent, more cash payments to Americans, and even more. Republican lawmakers say more government spending is not the answer, and they call the bill a liberal wish list. With President Donald Trump eager to see the economy booming once again and recovering, the majority of the country has already begun phase 1 in reopening. As business owners and consumers, what can they expect? Mark Martin spoke with a financial expert to take a look at what's to come.
Dan, what is the biggest challenge that companies and employees will face as they head back to work?
Well, I think fear is probably the biggest challenge, Mark, they're going to have to face. And that's why I think treatment is so critically important, that they can go to work knowing that there is a treatment that has been proven that's going to work. Obviously, a vaccine would be ideal, but it has to happen soon. I think one of the things that they're going to have to overcome is the fact that, hey, do I want to go back to work? I mean, if I go back to work, I am exposing myself to a risk that maybe has no treatment for. And that apparently is the biggest concern right now, because a lot of the people that are out are saying, you know, I'm not so sure I want to come back just yet. So that's going to be the biggest thing.
Do you think that the unemployment numbers will fall just as quickly as they jumped, or like what you're talking about, you think some people will just choose to stay on unemployment to not risk their health?
Well, I think two things. One is, yes, there are going to be an awful lot of people that are going to stay on unemployment until they feel they have a safe environment to work in. So corporations are going to have to prove that. The other thing is, Mark, that nobody's talking about is corporate America has to be thinking that, hey, there could be another round of this. They're talking that in the fall or the winter, there could be another round. Do I really want to gear up, bring everybody in, get cranked up as fast as we can with the notion that we might not have a vaccine and there may not be an adequate treatment? And I think corporate America themselves are going to take a little bit of a wait and see attitude. So that's going to be another issue that nobody seems to be counting.
What about unemployment numbers, you know, as far as them falling, you know, as fast possibly as they jumped? I mean, is that a realistic scenario, or is it going to be more gradual that these unemployment numbers drop?
It's definitely going to be gradual. It is not going to drop as quickly as they went up. That's not going to happen. It's going to be way more gradual for those two reasons I just mentioned. Slow employers moving slow, and employees still having some fear and concern. Now, again, we have a great treatment, an adequate treatment, and plenty of it, and we know we have a vaccine coming that could change that, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Okay. Well, where's the first place we will see a positive impact? Restaurants, retail stores? What do you think?
Yeah, I think restaurants and construction are going to be the two big ones. I think we'll see a jump in real estate activity. We're going into the busiest part of the selling and buying season. So we're going to see a jump there. So I would say real estate, restaurants, construction are probably going to pick up the quickest.
Okay. How long do you think it's going to be before we get the economy back to where it was before the pandemic?
Oh, I think we're into middle of first quarter next year at this point. Could go longer, but to get it back up to where it was, it's going to take that long, and it should, frankly. I think we need to give it some time. We flipped a switch on the economy, and it's not going to, the lights aren't going to get bright and running quite as quickly as they went off.
Do you have any advice for our government leaders at this time on the federal, state, and local levels, Dan?
Well, you know, I would tell them, Mark, real simply, and I've told some of them that I have their ear, that, look, we have got to get into this with some sense of security for the employer and the worker, number one. We've got to let them know that we have, we're standing ready to continue to give aid as needed. But the problem is we are now starting to get into this debate between aid for individuals and aid for corporate America. And I think that's where the real rub is going to be. But they have to make it clear that regardless of where we are willing, able, and ready to step in and help get this economy up and running. And the Federal Reserve has been doing an amazing job in doing just that. And hopefully they'll continue to do that.
All right. Thank you, Dan Celia, financial expert. Thank you for your time and your insights, Dan.
You're welcome, Mark. Great to be here.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo landed in Israel Wednesday in his first trip abroad since the COVID-19 lockdowns in the United States. He wore a patriotic mask and kept his social distance as he headed for separate meetings with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his new coalition partner, Knesset Speaker Benny Gantz. At a joint news conference ahead of their talks, Netanyahu said they'd focus on the coronavirus, Iran, and the peace process. Pompeo added a fourth as well.
We'd like to talk about strengthening our cooperation, our partnerships in battling the coronavirus plague. I know we'll deliver good outcomes and decrease risk for people all across the world from this global pandemic. You're a great partner. You share information, unlike some other countries that try and obfuscate and hide that information. And we'll talk about that country too.
There are reports that one of the biggest things on the U.S. agenda is convincing Israel to stop Chinese investments in the Israeli economy. I want to turn now to questions as they continue to swirl about lockdowns happening throughout the country and around the world. Israeli researchers from Hebrew University have investigated whether these restrictions went too far. They're offering conclusions countries might find useful in the continuing struggle. Chris Mitchell is on this story for us.
Perhaps the biggest conclusion from this research is by taking certain measures, many countries would not have needed to close down.
The big picture is that in many countries, if you have the population behave in a responsible way, I mean, face masks, hygienic measures, some social distancing, like 1 or 2 meters from each other, then in these situations, sometimes you can avoid lockdowns.
The research data included measuring the number of ICU beds against the larger population. If enough beds remained available for people in the country, researchers concluded a total lockdown could be avoided.
In some countries where the number of ICU beds per million is not high enough, then sometimes partial quarantine is required to some populations. For example, if you need to quarantine the high-risk population for a certain period. For example, in Israel, the need in ICU beds was no more than 60, 70 ICU beds per million. In different countries, it changes. By the ratio in Israel was that, in fact, there was no need to do a lockdown here.
They also take the approach that countries need to closely examine the economic and human consequences of a total lockdown versus the risk of exposing people to the virus.
First of all, many people lose their life in the lockdown because of avoiding, like, for example, people they need the chemotherapy therapy, they avoid going to the hospital. People avoid medical treatment because of the lockdown, but also I think the number of domestic violence and drugs and all these things that will happen as a result of this massive unemployment will cause its toll, and I think the toll will be in human lives.
After looking at the total research, these professors feel the chosen cure could ultimately lead to a worse outcome than the sickness. Professor Gershon acknowledges the team's conclusion resulted from poring through several weeks of data after the pandemic began. Still, he adds, their research will be useful for the future. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, how the United States is helping keep the peace in international waters as China is acting aggressively. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
As countries around the world continue to battle the COVID-19 pandemic, China is acting aggressively against its neighbors in the South China Sea. More than $5 trillion worth of goods pass through strategic lanes each year. Now the United States and Australia are joining forces to keep the international waters open and free from Chinese dominance. CBN's Asia correspondent Lucille Toulousan has the latest.
The United States and Australia joined forces to make sure China doesn't use the COVID-19 crisis as a distraction to make further gains in the South China Sea. Both countries have dispatched warships that are operating near disputed waters claimed by Malaysia and China. Not even the deadly coronavirus can hamper China's ambition towards becoming a great country with global influence. As the global community criticizes the Chinese government's lack of transparency and mishandling of the COVID-19 crisis, China's Navy has been taking aggressive action in the South China Sea. In the past weeks, China has been hounding Indonesian fishing vessels in the Indonesian waters off the Natuna Islands. China also rammed and sank a Vietnamese shipping boat with 8 fishermen on board while they were out fishing in the Paracel Islands, which are controlled by China but also claimed by Vietnam. Vietnam may soon file an international arbitration case against China in response to rising Chinese harassment in the contested waterway.
While the littoral states are preoccupied with the pandemic, it continued to expand its facilities on its artificial islands, created 2 new local districts covering the area of its claims, and deployed a survey vessel protected by its Navy and Coast Guard ships in the exclusive economic zone of Malaysia. Its fishing fleet continued to operate in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone all through March and April while the country was still in lockdown.
Despite its friendly relations with Beijing, the Philippine government filed diplomatic protests against China for pointing a radar gun at a Philippine Navy ship in Philippine waters and declaring parts of Philippine territory as part of China. Those actions are considered to be violations of international law and Philippine sovereignty. The Philippines and other claimants agree that such incidents with China should be dealt in a manner that enhances mutual trust and dialogue to maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea. Is China taking advantage of the pandemic by its control of the South China Sea while countries are preoccupied with the coronavirus? Security analyst Dr. Romel Banlawi states in an article published for the South China Sea Strategic Situation Probing Initiative, based on the current realities on the ground, China's recent actions have nothing to do with the pandemic. In fact, the pandemic is not affecting the positions and actions of countries asserting claims on the South China Sea. In other words, the South China Sea dispute between China and its neighbors has continued for years. The COVID-19 pandemic has only heightened tensions and suspicions of Communist China's motives in the region. Lucille Toulousan, CBN News, Manila, Philippines.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
In this age of sheltering in place, the Seattle-based band Citizens has released a unique music project. It's called The Joy of Being. It's a collection of songs recorded for the church to sing, and it was made without music or production overcoming the lyrics. And that's because they only use their iPhones to do it.
All I need, you're all I need. In the air I breathe, in the joy of being, hidden in your time, until the life ahead. You're all I need, you're all I.
And that's just a sample of the raw and beautiful sound of Citizens, The Joy of Being. And joining us now is one band member, Zach Boland. Thank you so much for being with us. First off, we see you guys, empty church, just your iPhones for this project. What inspired it?
Well, you know, it goes back almost 5 years ago. We wanted to make a record that was kind of stripped of sort of like a style, and we sort of gave more of the lyrics and the melody so that people could imagine for themselves based on wherever church they are, whatever context they're in, to be able to create and arrange around what was best for their people. And so that's really what inspired that idea. And being in an empty church building, we did that a few months ago, not realizing that, you know, so many churches would be empty now. And so, so it comes at a pretty unique time. We're feeling really grateful about that.
This is a very unique project, the way you guys chose to do it with just your iPhones. What surprised you about it all?
That it sounded okay. You know, I mean, we were expecting it to not really turn out that great. We just set them up and we spent, you know, a couple hours just recording the songs, and then we're like, all right, let's go back and listen. And to our surprise, we were in our church building, and we just felt that it captured something really special.
What are you hearing and seeing from people? Because I know they can text you their video of their interpretations of it. What are you getting?
These kinds of situations tend to birth a lot of creativity, and there's the space to do it. And so people have just, I think, been sending us arrangements that haven't played their guitar in years and just felt like, I'm going to pick it up, you know? And then others who have sent us, who are producers and different people, have sent us all kinds of things. And that was the spirit in which this thing was created, was to bring people together, to bring different sounds and creativity, and just for people to find a way to connect to it beyond just listening, but also to feel like they can participate with it and sing along too. And so we've gotten tons of people sending us really fun videos.
For you guys as artists, we know that connection is very important in actually seeing and experiencing and feeling what your audience is feeling. What's life like for you guys now? How are you coping through this?
That's a great question. You know, it is a big change because like most bands, you depend a lot on being able to travel and play shows and just being able to interact with your fans and people that have connected with your music face to face. And so that's been a big adjustment, but we're learning, you know, and I think one thing that's been really encouraging to me is that, we were all sort of thrust into having to get creative and reimagine what life is going to be for the foreseeable future. And I'm kind of excited to see how maybe some of the things that come out of just our time being more just physically not together in the same spaces, what sort of new things that brings about. And so we're learning ways to do that, but it's definitely a challenge. And we're glad that there's still a way, like through the internet, to still share music and share we're making and the stories that we're wanting to share.
You are based in Seattle. You guys are based in Seattle, and Seattle is one of the first places to make headlines for the illness. What's been your prayer for your community?
You know, revival. People, I think, are beginning to kind of become a little more introspective and think about purpose and life. And I know one of the big things is like, oh my gosh, my life was so crazy before, and now I don't have all these things going on. What am I going to do when I come out of this? And so there's just been a lot of really great opportunities, and I think that's the sweet way the church can continue to be a light, is to continue having church services online, because sharing those, I know for us, we share those with friends, and there's people that aren't Christians that are watching that. And there's been a lot of really cool conversations. So that's what we're praying for, is that God would continue to work through the church even when we can't all be together in the same space.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the music, and we look forward to the studio project.
Thank you so much.
And for more uplifting stories in the world of entertainment, be sure to catch Studio 5 on the CBN News Channel. There's an all-new show coming up tonight at 9:30 Eastern.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
I want to leave you with this thought today. The joy of the Lord is our strength, and that strength is made perfect in our weakness. Take comfort in that word this day. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. I want to remind you, you can comment on all the stories you've seen today by emailing us. The address is newswatch@cbn.com. I encourage you to make today a wonderful Wednesday and a wonderful rest of the week. We'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.